Hey guys, welcome back. This is Sub LBC here doing another video update, and this is just going to be a very quick addendum to my previous video in which we were going over the bypass procedure for removing power steering fluid from, at least in my case, a BMW X5 E70. And again, for all you guys that are haven't seen the previous video, I will include a link in the description so you can check it out. But again, we have a 2013 BMW X5 E70. This is just your standard, 3-liter turbo. 2013 was the last year of the E70, and in my particular case, I had some, really ugly nastiness going on with my power steering reservoir, or I should say power steering fluid reservoir, and obviously I wanted to replace that while at the same time getting as much of the old fluid out of the car as possible, because I really had no idea, what the overall quality of the fluid was, and I didn't want to take any chances. Obviously with a car like this one, this is a E70 Premium. Okay, and it also does have the adaptive drive package, which means it has active steering, ARS, as well as the the electronic dampening. But to my surprise, this car, because it is a premium with third row, also has air ride in the rear, and I did not know about that. And even if I did, I didn't really think that there was much of a connection between the hydraulic system and the air ride, but there definitely is a connection there, because the moment we started draining all the fluid out of this car, the car was just going into complete pandemonium. Started sagging in the rear, and we were getting all kinds of adaptive drive or dynamic auto leveling suspension errors coming from the car. We're getting no coolant errors from the car, because obviously I did not reconnect the sensor when I was temporarily using the coolant reservoir to keep the car running while we were doing the bypass process. So I wanted to update people to basically say that one of the biggest mistakes in the way that I was doing it was not so much with the procedure, but with the amount of fluid that you actually need. So I would say that if you are trying to go for a full bypass with a car that has none of the driving aids, it's just a standard power steering front end with no active steering, no ARS, no air ride, none of that, then you might be able to get away with just doing 2 liters, one to flush the system, and then one to basically top it off and get it going again. Although, looking back on how things went, I would say maybe 3 liters might be better. 2 to flush and reset, and then 1 to top off the res, and that would definitely get you done. You'd have a really great fluid exchange, at that volume. But with a car like this, with ARS, those lines run all the way to the back of the car, and of course it's got more lines that run to the anti-roll stabilizers in the front of the car, and then you have more dedicated lines that are running to the air ride suspension. And with all of that, guys, you're just 2 liters is not going to get it done. It was such a ridiculous underestimate on my part. So moving forward, if I were to do this whole procedure again, I would definitely go with just getting a whole 5-liter bottle and maybe 1 additional liter like this, just to save for the reservoir, because with the way I did it, I went through a second one, and then by the time I'm going through the third one, I'm getting a little worried, because I do need to keep 1 on standby, obviously, to fill the top off the res, and then I need another one because I am planning on removing the rear stabilizer, and obviously when I disconnect the hydraulic lines to that stabilizer, there's going to be some fluid loss. So I want to make sure I have enough of this stuff, to top off the reservoir again after I do that. So we're just pumping out a ton of fluid, and then at some point, we just have to call it quits. You know what I'm saying? And this stuff is getting really expensive. In fact, I ended up spending about $150 or so, because I did get 2 liters off Amazon at the lowest price possible, but on short notice I had to go pick up 2 more, and they were like $44 versus like $30. So I ended up spending like 150-ish for 4 liters when I could have gotten like 5 liters for around the same price, if not a little bit less. So, just a heads up, if you are going to do, a flushing procedure on a car like this one, just go for the gold, get the full 5-liter bottle, maybe get 1 additional liter on top of that, just to guarantee you can top off your reservoir when you're done. And in that way, you'll get the, full fluid evacuation from the system. You know what I'm saying? But one thing I will say, though, is that, once all the fluid was pumped out, or, I was done just pumping in fluid and put the whole system back together and topped it off, the car was just in a complete, state of pandemonium. It wasn't happy about the coolant, wasn't happy about the fact that the hydraulics were lost, the car was sagging. Excuse me. But once everything was topped off, and I had the car up front end off the jack, racking the steering back and forth, and basically getting the fluid pumped in and saturating the system again, the car seemed to behave normally. And from there, I just took it right to the gas station because there was literally no gas in the car when I was doing this whole procedure, which of course upped the stress level even more, given all the things that were going wrong. But yeah, I took it to the gas station, turned it off the car, went to go pay for the gas, come back out, fill up the gas, and when I turned the car back on again, it was 100% happy with the situation. Yeah, no more coolant error, no more suspension error, nothing. No errors, no error codes, no warnings from the car, nothing. And it was just back to normal as if nothing else had happened. So was really happy about that. But, moving forward, now that I have the new reservoir in here, based on the fact that I now kind of know the internal geometry of this reservoir, it's probably pretty easy to do a bypass without even having to remove the reservoir at all. You can actually probably just use the same line that I was feeding into the return line and just jam it in here, really, really well. Because the return line is at the lowest point and the fluid has to come all the way up to the top and then go through the filter side before it goes back into the car. So it's really easy to kind of line things up. And then you can just drain out a bunch of fluid, replace it with new, pump it in, and just make sure that the return fluids don't ever make it back into the reservoir. And if you can do that, then you can do the whole job without having to remove the reservoir. Now, obviously, this isn't going to make much sense if you plan on swapping out the reservoir anyways. But, moving forward, at least in my case, and, anyone who's just installed a new reservoir, moving forward, you could probably just do the bypass after the fact. It was just easier for me to do it, since the reservoir was already out of the car. You know what I'm saying? And, yeah, so that's pretty much that. But yeah, we're backed up, topped off on fluid, and moving forward, again, you probably want to swap the reservoir every 50,000 miles, or if it starts leaking or having some weird issues. But moving forward, again, it's never a bad thing to just extract a full reservoir verse of fluid and then just fill it up with one of these. And if obviously the more and more you do that, the more and more you increase the quality of the fluid over time. And of course, if you want to do a full bypass, then just buy a 5 liter. But it's probably be helpful to have a friend. Otherwise, in my case, if you're going to be trying to set up a 5 liter IV bag, you're probably going to have to literally build your own custom contraption, that has safe connectors all around, and also some open close valves for allowing fluid into the system, as well as open close valves for whatchamacallit, the air offset, you know what I'm saying? And I could probably make something like that very, very easily, but, on short notice, I just didn't want to deal with all that. So, we basically extracted about 2.5 liters from the system, with about 3 or so liters going in, give or take. And that's, more or less how the system re-leveled itself. And it's been good to go ever since. Really stoked about it. Unfortunately, though, as things were getting all put back together again, I was having massive coolant leaks coming from my reservoir, and I could obviously see that there was a lot of fluid coming from the cap area, and this was a real issue because obviously, getting a whole reservoir, a new cap, to see it leak is very disheartening. And I just could not figure out why. And it seemed that every time I topped it off to the max line, ran the bleed process, then drove the car, it would just start, leaking out fluid. And, I was like, okay, maybe, I don't know, there's too much fluid. That wasn't the case. And it was doing it so much, I thought maybe there might be a leak at the bottom and the leak at the top was just incidental. But upon doing further research, I noticed that when I bought this new cap here, you see those numbers there, 140. So that's basically means this cap has a 140 kilopascal rating. And as it turns out, not all caps are the same, and this particular car actually requires a 200 kPa cap. That's spec. So this is obviously way lower than that. And that kind of makes sense, again, because when it's filled up to maximum, it will blow coolant past the cap. But once the fluid level gets kind of below the minimum, not enough to set off the sensor alarm, but, to where it's about, a good amount lower than the minimum, then there's enough air expansion for the tank to work. And honestly, if you don't mind running your coolant below the min line, you could probably get away with a 140 cap like this and not have any leaking issues or anything. But if you do want to keep the fluid at the max level inside the reservoir, the 140 cap is not going to get the job done. So luckily, the 200 cap is the same price. Just going to return this one, get the 200 on there, and test it to make sure that it works. And if so, then we're completely good to go. And I'm so excited, guys. It's just so rare to see a car like this. without a power steering, reservoir full of crap, and coolant leaks all over the place. It'll be the first time in a while that this whole side of the car is buttoned up. And obviously, we've got the metal charge pipe in there. I've done a lot of work on the right side, even down there. You probably can't see it, but right behind that big black tube, you can see like those two solenoids. That's actually the coolant valve system for the temperature control. So when you're bringing in hot air into the climate control system, that's what allows the warm air to flow. And when I first got this car, that had failed, so I had to replace that. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work here on the right side of the car. So yeah, in any case, in the next video, we're going to continue to kind of go over some things here, top end that you want to look for if you're going to be, doing major maintenance in the car. There's always things to look for, guys, with these things. And then after that, we're going to make some videos showing you guys how to deal with differential and transfer case fluid change, which are very, very important. So definitely stick around for that, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see y'all soon.